Silent Hill 2 and Signalis are two of the greatest survival horror games ever made. And I think Signalis is a game that is very clearly indebted to the entire Silent Hill series, and very specifically the second entry. And I don't think that's all that unique of a position, seeing as how Silent Hill 2 is a masterpiece and influenced every other horror game going forward. I think that what makes both of these games so great is the fact that they're willing to ask very deep and personal questions. They're willing to ask questions about morality and right and wrong, and I think the reason why both of these games work so well is because of the fact that their stories thrive in the morally gray. I think that with regards to the central conflict that their protagonists face, the two games are very similar. But even though Elster and Signalis faces a similar conflict to James in Silent Hill 2, and even though based on player choices, the characters can end up in the same position at the end of their respective games, one thing that I've noticed is that the Signalis community cuts Elster a lot more slack than the Silent Hill community cuts James. When discussing James as a character, there are a lot of people who absolutely despise him, who hate him. There are people who don't sympathize with him whatsoever, and there are people who think that he's a horrible human being. But one thing that's interesting to me is that you don't see so many people talk about Elster that same way. I think that Elster and James are two sides of the same coin, or maybe even the same side of the same coin depending on how you play it. And so with that, I would like to explore the differences between how the two characters have been received by their respective communities. So in my intro, I did my best to not spoil anything, but here's your spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about the endings of both Signalis and Silent Hill 2, and while I am going to be using a lot of footage from the Silent Hill 2 remake, I don't think I'm going to spoil any of the new stuff in that game, except I will talk briefly about one puzzle that you find in the apartments in the Silent Hill 2 remake, but I'll let you know when that's coming up. So it's my firm belief that if you were to draw a Venn diagram for Silent Hill 2 fans and Signalis fans showing the overlap, then the group of Signalis fans is a bubble that sits squarely in the middle of the Silent Hill 2 fans. What I mean to say is that everyone who plays Signalis is a Silent Hill fan, but not every Silent Hill fan has played Signalis. And as I said earlier, the Signalis devs have very clearly indicated that they were influenced and inspired by the Silent Hill games, and even if they didn't admit that, it's pretty obvious if you play through Signalis. There are a lot of references to Silent Hill, and specifically Silent Hill 2. And as I was saying, I think that the central conflicts that the protagonists in each game face are more or less one and the same. So to recap the events of Silent Hill 2, James and Mary are a couple. Mary comes down with an illness and gets very sick. James stays with her for a long time, but it's taking its toll on him. Mary is in great pain. She tells James that she wants to die, but she also doesn't want to die. She just wants to live and be happy. One day, James can't take it anymore, and so he smothers her with a pillow, killing her. Now, James's reasons for killing Mary are somewhat complicated. The way I interpret things, James's emotions were very complex, so he was angry at her because he hated her, and he hated her because he was mad at her for taking away his life, but at the same time, he loved her, he married her after all, and he didn't want to see her suffer any more than she had to. And he wanted to move on, but at the same time, he felt guilty about leaving Mary behind, but still it was eating away at him and draining him to have to watch his loved one, Mary, go through all this. And so finally, one day he snaps and he kills her. So I think that all the reasons that James gives for killing Mary are valid, but I think that the way that James interprets the events and the way that he views his killing of Mary changes based on the way that you play Silent Hill 2, which is why you get different endings. So I think in one way, all the reasons that James gives for killing Mary are 100% equally valid. And I think that things happened, but it's just up to James to figure out how to view them and what the narrative going forward is. It's up to him to choose what he wants to believe going forward, which then affects how he lives out the remainder of his life. Now, let me tell you the plot of Signalis, and you tell me if it sounds similar at all. In Signalis, there is a girl named Ariane. She grows up in a futuristic sci-fi dystopia. She is more or less forced on a suicide mission by the government of her nation, wherein they will put her in a space pod and fling her out to the far reaches of the solar system. Basically, the nation is hoping to find habitable planets more or less randomly. And so, if the pilots on the ships find a habitable planet, they are supposed to let the nation know, otherwise they are supposed to just fade away and die. Now, these gestalts, or regular human beings, are paired with a replicant, or an android copy of a gestalt. Ariane is a gestalt, and she is paired with an Elster unit. Despite the fact that this kind of relationship is forbidden, Ariane and Elster fall in love. It's just the two of them, far and away, out in space, away from everyone else. But again, this is a suicide mission that they're on. So the space shuttle that they're on begins to break down, radiation begins to seep through the cracks of the ship. Ariane gets sick. Now, the nation's instructions to the Gestalt pilot say that at the point that this is happening, then the pilot should have the replicant kill them. So according to the Nation, Arion is supposed to have Elster kill her. Essentially, there is no hope for them returning home. The odds of them finding a habitable planet all of a sudden are very slim, and with each passing day, Arion gets worse and worse, losing teeth, losing hair, she begins rotting away. So as she becomes more and more sick, Arion asks the Elster unit to kill her. Elster doesn't want to kill her lover, so freaking out, she throws Arion into a cryopod, which then artificially preserves her life. Without getting too bogged down in the details, Arion has bioresonance abilities. This allows her to project things into the heads of others, and I believe also allows her to change the reality of things. So in this cryopod, Arion is still alive, and essentially Arion is able to put Elster into a sort of contorted dream of her own making. Essentially, she's like Alessa in the original Silent Hill and is able to manifest things like that. And so the entire game of Signalis is a very disjointed narrative, wherein Arion is just trying to get Elster to remember to kill her. Before things ever got super bad, Elster made the promise to Arion that she would kill her if necessary, but when the time came for Elster to kill Arion, Elster ran away. So the entire game is an attempt on Arion's part to get Elster to remember her promise and to come back and kill her. So essentially, both Signalis and Silent Hill 2 ask questions about mercy killings. In Silent Hill 2, James for sure kills his wife. This is not up for debate, this happens before the events of the game, and that is the main reason why people hate him. People see him as a psychotic murderer, people see him as a killer, and the game itself asks a lot of questions about whether or not what James did was right. And even James isn't 100% sure. And certainly me as the player, I can't say for sure if what he did was right. But at the same time, I can recognize that it was a very difficult situation to be in, to sit there and watch your loved one suffer. But then Elster in Signalis is on the flip side of things. She made the promise to kill her lover, Arion, and when the time came, she ran away from it. And like Silent Hill 2, there is, to my knowledge, no canon ending to Signalis. Signalis does feature an ending called Promise, wherein Elster remembers her promise to kill Arion, and she puts Arion out of her misery. Many people consider this to be the good ending to Signalis. And one of the creators has mentioned that they don't like the idea of there being good or bad endings to Signalis. They want each player to interpret how they view the game, as opposed to being told. They want players to think for themselves and to decide if the ending was good or bad based on their own ideas and interpretations. But that's still the way that things are. People view this ending as the good ending of Signalis. Other endings to Signalis feature Arion forgetting who Elster is, and when that happens, Elster dies, but Arion is still alive. And in another ending, Elster isn't even able to approach the cryopod that Arion is in. And so like James, Elster was given the chance to mercy kill her loved one, but she didn't take it. Instead, she panicked and she threw Arion into a cryopod, which only extended her suffering and made things worse for Arion. Arion, through her bioresonance abilities, made the world a living hell for at least Elster, potentially others. It's very unclear in my mind exactly how much of the game takes place in the real world, if there is such a thing. To me, it's unclear who is a real character and who is not. But regardless of what's real and what isn't, Elster, because of her actions, is forced into a living hell the same way that James is in Silent Hill. But unlike James, I don't really see anyone hating on Elster. And there are a multitude of reasons for this, I think. For one thing, James is a certified killer. It sounds stupid to say it like that, but he is a confirmed killer. Canonically, James has killed Mary, and he also kills Eddie. But then in Signalis, Elster doesn't kill Arion. And the reason why she doesn't kill Arion is because she loves her. She cares about Arion, and she wants to see her happy. And when push comes to shove, she panics, and she can't follow through with killing Arion. James doesn't do that. James is able to follow through with murdering Mary. And you hear this in Silent Hill 2 that Mary wants to die, but she also doesn't want to die. She's kind of ambivalent about things, but James cuts her off. Regardless of what ending you get, James always kills Mary. But whether or not Elster follows through and kills Arion is entirely dependent on your playstyle. There are 4 endings to Signalis, and I think in only one of them, Arion is killed. But again, this is seen as the good ending. People praise Elster for killing Arion. So I think there are a lot of very clear parallels between James and Elster. And I think one major reason why people praise Elster but they don't praise James is because of the fact that Arion asked Elster to kill her, but Mary didn't really confirm that she wanted to die with James. So I think Signalis is actually able to take this narrative from Silent Hill 2 and twist it on its head. It's essentially able to take the morally gray actions of James in Silent Hill 2 and it's able to make them morally laudable for Elster and Signalis. In one game, mercy killing is at best morally gray and questionable, but in another game, as I've said, most people see it as good. Most people see Arion getting killed as the good ending. And I think that one major reason why Signalis is able to do this is because it has a bad guy. Signalis has someone to blame for all this. Arion was healthy and then she got sick because of the fact that her ship broke down. And her ship broke down because of the fact that she was forced by her nation onto this suicide mission. In essence, in Signalis, you can point to the nation and you can say, these guys are the bad ones. These guys are responsible for all of Arion's suffering and death. I think this allows a lot of people to view Elster in a much more positive light because of the fact that you can point to the nation as the bad guy. You can literally point your finger at someone and say that they are the ones responsible. But with Silent Hill 2, you can't really do that. With Silent Hill 2, what happened is James and Mary were married, and then Mary gets sick. At no point is Mary ever implied to have done anything to deserve this illness. She's never implied to have made a mistake that resulted in this illness. She's never implied to have done something stupid that could have caused her to become ill. As it is in the real world, sometimes people just get sick and die, and it's through no fault of their own. And so because of that, Silent Hill 2 doesn't have anyone that you can point the blame on for Mary's sickness. If the game really wanted to, then it could have gone universal. It could have blamed God or the universe or fate. It could have blamed a dozen other things for Mary's illness, but that's never really the case. As the game presents it, Mary just got ill, and that's the way things were. And so the two of them together were in this really bad situation, at which point James takes action and kills her, and finally, then and there, you have someone you can blame. You can make an argument that James did the wrong thing through his action. And I think that in some regards, the situation as found in Signalis is actually quite gray. Essentially, the question that Signalis asks is, are you right to not kill someone if they want to die? And I think that we typically associate killing with bad guys. We see that as something the villains do. You know, Batman doesn't kill, Spider-Man doesn't kill. You have these characters who are seen as good who do not kill. But then the question that Silent Hill 2 asks is reversed. It asks the question, is it wrong to kill someone if their suffering is so great? Is there a point when it's okay to mercy kill someone? And I think in all of us, there's a kind of gut instinct where we go, killing is always bad. Killing someone who's innocent just because they're sick is not a good thing. And so I think in that sense, things are kind of stacked against James from the start. Even though James and Elster's situation can end the same, I think it's much easier to view Elster in a positive light than it is to view James in a positive light. After all, in Elster's situation, you have someone to blame. You can blame the nation, you can blame the ship. There are a lot of other things to blame besides Elster's inability to act and kill Arion. But in Silent Hill 2, you can't really point your finger at too many other things. You can say, well, maybe the doctors could have worked harder to save Mary. Or you can say that James shouldn't have killed Mary at all, or even considered it. But as you hear from Mary, she wants to die. She's miserable. And I think that, as in my mind, James's reasoning for doing what he did is very convoluted. He loved Mary, so he wanted to kill her, but he also hated her, so he wanted to get rid of her. I think in that same vein, Mary's own reasoning is convoluted. She's miserable, and so she wants to die, but at the same time, she loves her family, she loves Laura, and she loves James, and so she wants to live and keep on seeing them. But everything hurts, and she feels so ugly, and she feels like a monster. But at the same time, she wants to be strong and she knows that she's hurting James. She knows how draining it is for James every time he comes up and visits her. And so I think that despite the fact that Signalis and Silent Hill 2 have very similar premises, I think that the way that Silent Hill 2 presents its own is much more morally gray than the way that Signalis presents its premise. Or maybe it's not down to how it presents its premise. I think that Silent Hill 2 works with a more difficult premise than Signalis does. And I love both games, and I've made a bunch of video essays on both of them, but I do feel that in terms of questioning morality, Silent Hill 2 is a much more challenging work. I think that in terms of presentation, or in terms of being esoteric or whatever else, Signalis is the more challenging game, but I think that when it comes to asking life questions, the question that Silent Hill 2 asks is much more difficult to grapple and grasp. So I think that James gets a bad rap. And I don't mean to say that James was perfect, because he absolutely wasn't. I think another reason why people don't like James as much is because of the fact that the sexuality of Silent Hill 2 is so much more forward than the sexuality of Signalis. Many of the Silent Hill 2 monsters are designed to represent James's lust and his desire for intimacy that his wife cannot fulfill, and the enemy designs of Signalis don't really have the same thing going on. And I think that's another thing you can point to as a reason to hate James. But really, the reason I'm making this video is because I think that James gets a lot of hate. but I think that the situation that he found himself in is by design very difficult. I think in Signalis there's a very clear bad guy. I think there's very obviously someone to be pissed off about, but I think that in Silent Hill 2 you choose who the bad guy is. And one last thing, I think that one thing that separates these two games is that Signalis shows you a lot of glimpses of Elster and Arion together. You see what life was like before things went bad, and so because of that you develop a sort of affection towards Arion and Elster as a couple. But with Silent Hill 2 you don't get that. With Silent Hill 2 the only flashback that you get for James and Mary's relationship together when Mary was still alive is the videotape. Everything else you learn about their relationship comes from James's recollections or it comes from Laura. You don't really get any cutscenes of the two of them together. And so I think that's just another thing that makes James a lot more difficult to like as a character. You know that Mary loved him, but you don't actually see why Mary fell in love with him. You don't see James at his best, you only see him at his absolute worst. You only see James when he has a sick wife or after he's killed her. You don't see what James was like when things were good. And so because of that, I think that oftentimes he is unfairly judged as a character. Again, to reiterate my position, I'm not saying that James was right to kill his wife. I'm not saying he was right to kill Mary, but what I am saying is that it's a very complicated situation and I don't think that he should be demonized. And I think that the question of fate comes up again in the remake's coin puzzle in the apartment building. A version of the puzzle exists in the original game, but the remake uses the coin puzzle to tell a version of the story where a man with a sword is approaching a woman to kill her, but then a snake bites and kills the woman, leaving the man's sword unbloodied. And the game asks the question, who is at fault for killing the woman? And you can say that it is the snake's fault for killing her. You can say that it is the man's fault for chasing her into the snake and attempting to kill her, or you can say it was the woman who is responsible for her own death. And so I think this just goes back to the idea that in Silent Hill 2, it's unclear who to blame. Because honestly, just throwing your hands up and saying that Mary got sick because that's the way life is not a satisfying conclusion to come to. So with that, I think that's about all I have to say on these games for now. Thank you for watching, let me know your thoughts down below, and we're actually coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my first Signalis video, which I think is probably the best writing I've ever done on this channel. So if you haven't checked that one out, then feel free to give it a look-see. But thank you for watching, have a nice night, and see ya. Bye. Bye.